What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we're gonna go full Bill Nye the Science Guy and have a little hypothesis, see if the hypothesis carries out. But before we dive in, we gotta ask the most important question of the day when it comes to bag building. How you doing today, Basil? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
I want to talk about an issue that I think lots of folks have when it comes to building their bag. And this is a video that we did a long time ago, and actually having this discussion with a friend recently. I sent that video to him and realized that it's somewhat outdated, and honestly, we've just kind of gotten better at video quality. But I've noticed here in the disc golf space that people are starting to take that Ryan Trahan approach of storytelling. So here's the plan. First, we're going to talk about this problem that beginners have in building their bag. Second, we're going to talk about a proposed solution to that problem. And third, we're gonna celebrate and rejoice in the classic foundation way, and maybe get some ice cream. But that's not me. And I honestly love that type of storytelling. Ryan Trahan is one of my favorite creators on all of YouTube, and he's actually the one who inspired the "How you doing today, so-and-so" that we do at the beginning of the intro every time. So thank you, Ryan, for your contributions and making YouTube a better space. I don't wanna go with the game plan. I wanna give you the more scientific approach, because as we mentioned during the intro, Bill Nye the Science Guy, obviously disc golfer. So we want to embrace his science roots. Here's our hypothesis coming back from the old video, and that is that the less options we have, the more confident we are going to be in every decision. I think that when we have too many decisions to make, it can cloud our judgment, and when we make the right decision, it still leaves some question marks in our head, and when we make the wrong decision, it further cements those as being very wrong decisions, thus lowering our confidence in not only discs we threw, but perhaps even the discs that we didn't throw. I guess it kind of at least makes sense to me. So that's the hypothesis. Let's throw some discs and see that theory in play. Now, in order to flesh out this hypothesis, we have to make sure that in the scientific method, we're using the same terms. The hypothesis has two somewhat similar words in choices and decisions. And I think that these two can often feel like the same thing, but for our conversation, they mean something different. When we're talking about choices, we're talking about the discs we have in our bag and what shots we can actually throw with those discs. For instance, I have this Lucid X Chameleon Felon that is crazy overstable that I can throw on a forehand, I can throw it on a backhand, but a backhand roller is not really an option for me. Forehand roller could be an option, but when it comes to choices with this disc, there is only a few actual shot selection opportunities that I have. If I'm stepping up to a hole that requires fairway distance in terms of choices, well, in my bag alone, I've got 8 different choices to make. And that once again is just talking about the discs themselves, not including the choices of, let's say that it's something on the understable side, which means that I'm choosing between my flippiest O-zone, my straighter O-zone, or my flippy eagle. And that's if I'm throwing all of them on backhand. I can throw both of these O-zones pretty comfortably on forehand, whereas this eagle, I can't necessarily throw it on forehand because it's just a little finicky for me personally to have confidence while I'm out there. So thinking about choices, I have forehand O-zone, backhand O-zone, forehand O-zone, backhand O-zone, and backhand eagle. That's 5 choices to make for this one shot. And then we'd head to the decision point. Hole 1 here is 221 feet to that basket right there. Now, an important thing to consider once I make a decision is that there is this van left of the basket. Thankfully, we have a left to right wind, and these are all factors that are going to go inside. Once I go through my choices, these are factors that I'm going to have to consider when I turn that choice into a decision. So at 221 feet, most likely, unless the wind starts ripping, I'm throwing a putter or an approach disc of some sort. Now, I realized that earlier this month, we released a video talking about replacing or what I was going to be throwing in my main throwing putter slot. But I will be, bringing you behind the curtain of all of this. Hopefully, at the point of this video releasing, we've actually had our son, so I'm shooting videos in advance to make sure that we have videos for you guys to have while we're celebrating life with our new son. So today, we haven't actually shot the video replacing it. So currently what I have is a Sky God 4. This is an overstable throwing putter, a nice classic C-Line P2 that I can throw out wide of the basket and let it crash in right. I know I can throw this disc on hyzer out wide and let it fade in, and the road will simply let it skip closer to the basket. Option 2 is straight pick. This is just an R-Pro pick that I know I can throw comfortably up to 280 feet out wide and then let it crash in towards the basket. And then option 3, the most overstable choice, is going to be the Zone GT that I also know I can throw out wide and let it crash in towards the basket. So based on the wind, I'm going to choose between between these. Notice this precious child is not in these choices because of the crosswind. I don't want it to stand up and turn over or anything like that. I'm gonna need it to fade. And plus with these overstable discs, I can allow myself to be confident in my decision because I'm able to hang it wide enough and know that these discs are still gonna get back. I would not forehand this, and the choices of forehanding it are gonna be out of the way because that would involve me throwing it somewhat directly at that truck. And even though no one's in it, I wanna make sure that I don't actually hit that because that would be a terrible thing. So because I know that I'm probably gonna be going extra wide, I'm gonna go ahead and take the pig out of there because I wouldn't have the confidence, because in order to create confidence, I'm gonna be trying to throw it as wide as possible. That is gonna help me make a better decision. And therefore, I'm between these two discs. I know that this disc is going to fight back, so I can hang this as wide as I want, but it's also going to be more oomph to get it there, which means that I'm going to have to overcommit, and that could cause me to yank it to the right because I wanna make sure that I get there. And if I'm being honest, you can see that I'm in a hoodie and jeans, so it is a little cold. My hands haven't quite warmed up yet. This is really my first throw of the day. So I'm gonna opt for the Sky God 4 because I think it's gonna be overstable. It's a little deeper, so I can get a hold of it and really pull it out to the right. See there, I'm walking through the choices that I have and talking about best case scenarios. They all land under the basket because I think in calm conditions, all of these could end up under the basket, but I'm walking through the choices and the best results and the worst results from them. And I'm gonna let those factors play in to help guide the decision so that I'm confident in what I wanna do. This is my decision, and now I step onto the box or the decision point. Once I'm here, I'm eliminating all those from my head. I'm telling myself they don't matter, they don't even exist, because I have one disc and I'm throwing one shot, and I'm gonna throw that one shot out and over. I'm gonna pick an aim point. For me, my aim point today is gonna be on hyzer, up and to the left of that T sign pole that's out there to the right. If I can pull and throw in that direction and give it height, I know that it'll crash back in. I'm not worried about getting to the car because of the crosswind. I, like that spotter that tried to get a roller to roll between his legs, have a decision to be made, and I've let an intrusive thought get in. I need to step away from the box. I need to step off the box. It is so much better to step away and then step back on with confidence than to do this. But what if I early release it? That could be really tough. That's fine, just don't do that. I'm not giving myself the time to reset. If I have that thought of, once again, what if I early release it? That's fine. Go ahead, physically step off the box, think a happy thought. Sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. Here we go. And now I re-enter the space with complete confidence. I'm seeing my line, I'm pointing in that direction, and I am going to trust that I have the capability to rip the disc down there and put it directly where I want to be. I actually didn't rip it as far right as I intended to rip it, but I played the worst case scenarios in my head, and one of them was, worst case scenario, I'm going to early release this thing. And if I early release the Sky God, it is not as overstable as the zone is, and therefore it's not gonna go as far left as the zone wanted to go. Because of this, I have helped shore up my decision, and I'm fully confident so that even on a bad shot, it could still go good. These are the factors that we want to play out in our head as we're making those, so that we can make the most confident and committed decisions possible. Because of this, what happens? We have allowed ourselves to put this Sky God right next to the basket, and we have a birdie look, and this is hole one. So we'd be starting on our round with confidence so that we know as we head towards the later parts of the round, we are confident in our decisions, because we're already making good decisions off the rip. Now there's two major elephants in the room that I want to talk about when it comes to this hypothesis, and that is having the right information as well as overlap that could cause to a lack of proper information. So let's talk first about the lack of information. If we think back to the choices that I was discussing on hole one of what I wanted each disc to do, I was even giving numbers, and I know, for instance, that I can throw straight pig about 280 feet comfortably when I throw it out there on a hyzer. How do I know this? Well, because I've been to a field and I've thrown the disc repeatedly, or I have played flat holes on a consistent basis where I know I can throw that disc about 280 feet. This is information that I need to have the choices be even more well developed. Because I have this information on my choices, even though I have several discs in my bag, the choices are actually a lot smaller because I know exactly what those choices can do. So many players are just chucking discs into their bag on a random basis, and they will, hey, I'm going to play with a new disc every single time that I go to play. There is a fun and joy that that brings, but if we're looking to talk about consistent scoring and scoring to the best of our abilities, then sort of having a more consistent bag could be exactly what you need to find that consistency in your game. This hole is 194 feet, but we have OB all the way to the left and we have an OB fence to the right. I'm gonna have to know what choices I have to throw this shot, whether it be the turnover options or whether it be the forehand option. For me personally, I like to go with the forehand. If you had this shot right here, is there a disc that's immediately coming to your mind that you're saying, I'm throwing that almost every single time? Calm conditions, perfect opportunity, this is the disc I'm throwing. What disc is it? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. If you had a disc that came to mind immediately, congratulations. You are in tune with your bag and you're really dialing in what that is. Now, let's just go ahead and throw out two different scenarios and see if that adjusts so you can adjust your comment down below. Let's say that we have a super strong headwind, a 15-mile-an-hour headwind coming at us, and now suddenly things are gonna be a little more flippy. Is the decision you've made to throw X disc on X shot still something you're confident in, or are you making an adjustment? Let's go one more time and say that we have that same 15-mile-an-hour wind, but now it's moving right to left. So it's blowing everything that way, which means that the turnover options are gonna be a little more difficult. The forehand options, if thrown with too much hyzer, are gonna get pushed down. What decision are you making now? I'll do you one better. What if it's this same shot, but instead of 194 feet, it's now 304 feet? We go the same direction out there. Obviously, the disc is gonna change. Now, my friend that I sent this to, he knew that he had a bag building issue. And as we sent this, we wanted to give him those decisions to be made. And the conversation we had to originally spark this, his decision points, he had, confidence in his decisions because he had very few choices. But because he had so few choices, there were opportunities where it came up where he couldn't make a confident decision because he did not have the right choices in his bag. So his decision, while it could be committed, it had no confidence because he knew that he just didn't have the choices to cover this. For instance, in his bag, he would have to move all the way from a hex straight up to a destroyer. There was no middle ground between those two. So here, where this may be a half pump destroyer or an over pumped hex, that could be extremely difficult for him to have confidence in this shot. And maybe in calm, perfect conditions, there's complete confidence because he can step up fully committed and confident and throw that destroyer out there on a forehand at that bump sign way out to the left and let it fade back in. But then if we go back to the same scenario of we have the 15-mile-an-hour headwind coming at us, suddenly that driver gets a little more squirrely because of that bigger rim. And the hex certainly isn't going to be it because he's going to have to fully send that disc, and that could cause it to turn over. Knowing your discs and knowing what opportunities you have, those choices can really inform it. But what happens when you go on either end of the extreme and you have too few choices or too many choices? Now, I've run a podcast for close to 3 years now, which is like a crazy thing to think about, called In the Bag, where we bring guests on every single week and we talk about what's in their bag, why they have certain discs in their bag, what shots they use them for. And we have lots of folks who will come on the show and they put their bag in a website called discrpm.com. And there you can insert your bag and it'll put it on this nice and organized chart. And this could allow you to see if you have overlap or if there are like gaping holes that you have in your bag on, let's say, a stability size, things like that. You can also adjust the flight numbers of the discs so that if you have, let's say, a wizard that is really beat in and seasoned and it doesn't fly like a wizard anymore, you can adjust those flight numbers to move it accordingly based on where you think it sits in the stability chart of your bag graphic. But we bring these guests on, and when we have these guests on, there is almost a disc in every single person's bag that they end up saying something along the lines of, yeah, I don't really know why I have that disc in my bag. It either doesn't do what I think it does, or it's kind of inconsistent and it might be on its way out. When we have discs that are on their way out and we don't have a lot of confidence in it, it gets really hard to go to that choice and then make a confident or committed decision because that disc has burned us in the past, either for not doing what it's supposed to, feels like you get an inconsistent release on it, whatever it may be. When confidence starts waning on a disc, it's probably time for it to go in timeout. And if it leaves your bag for a short period of time and you find yourself missing that disc, Well, that just means when it comes back, it's gonna have even more confidence behind it because you realize that you actually did need it for your game. Maybe you were just utilizing it in the wrong spots. And I'll be the first to admit that there are people who come on the show that have sort of spots where we're like, hey, that doesn't look like a very well thought through bag, or this seems really congested in this part of the bag and there seems to be a lot of overlap. And when you have a lot of overlap, and once again, it gets very hard going to our hypothesis because I have so many choices in that area that I'm going to be thinking about when, let's say I throw a shot and it doesn't go picture perfect, should I have gone with another one? Which once again lowers my confidence in not only the disc I threw because I didn't throw it how I wanted to, but also why did I not just go to that other option? And then let's say later on I go to that other option and I don't throw it well either. Well, now I'm looking at the last 2 throws that I have on that hole and I'm thinking that I didn't throw the first one well, I didn't throw the second one well. Am I just off? Do I have the wrong disc? All these decisions start filling my mind, which allows me to be less committed and confident on the shot. And therefore I'm gonna make worse decisions overall. But like we talked about in that example, that's one thing to have too many choices so that things are clustered and gathered, but it's another thing to go on the extreme side of things because there are folks who are out there who really have like a big bag, such as this one right here, and they've got too many discs in there and they actually only end up throwing like 3 or 4 during the round. Now I'll be the first to tell you that depending on the course, even with my big bag, I know that there are certain courses that I'm just gonna throw like 3 or 4 discs over and over again because sometimes courses are rather simple or straightforward and so you just end up leaning on the old reliable. This is obviously not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about situations where you're on a course that's actually gonna challenge or push you and you only end up using the same 2 or 3 discs anyways. But second, if you had other discs in there, would that actually open up the choices you have to allow you to score better and more frequently rather than forcing discs into certain spots because you just don't have the choices that you need. For instance here, that basket is about 315 feet away from us. And so if I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about current power thresholds that I have, could I pump a mid all the way out there? I certainly could. It would take some effort. It would take a lot of pizzazz. I'd have to give it the beans to try to get it all the way there, which means that I'm going to be losing accuracy and consistency. Now, if I don't have a lot of fairway drivers because I've just decided that I'm a mid-range guy or I'm going big in the driver category, then I now at 315 feet am having to take power off of a driver. This can be a problem all its own. So this is where having the choices of fairway drivers can really lean into it. And what I like about the choices that we have in fairway drivers is thinking back to the first hole, whether it be the O-zones or the Eagle, this is exactly what I'm looking for here because I want to be able to throw the understable easy line and see what we can get out of it. As a reminder, I have a flippy Eagle, I have a flippy O-zone, and I have a neutral to straight O-zone. Now what we're throwing in is we have ourselves a little bit of a tailwind, and because we have a tailwind, that's going to cause everything to be a little more overstable. So once again, if I'm going for easiness, I'm going to look at the overstable O-zone and think to myself, okay, straight to overstable O-zone. It's not it. That's not going to make it easy for me to get that. While the O-zone is easy distance, I just want to be as easy and thoughtless as possible. That also means that this Eagle is going to be a little more overstable than I'm looking for. So because of that, it's also out. There is a ton of open space to the right and there is OB concrete to the left. Therefore, if this decides not to be as stable as I'm giving it credit for in the tailwind, in worst case scenario, it should turn over and find itself to the right. Instead of getting all the way over and turning all the way over like it might have tried to, the tailwind really helped us out here and put it down so I'm just inside of the circle. Now let's say that I just had a mid-range and I needed to send a mid-range and yeet this thing all the way out there. Well, it worked out. It got all the way down there. I'm actually pretty close to the basket. And if I'm being real, that's the testament we're looking for to close out the year. That feels good. That, you know, just toss that mid-range, 315 feet. That distinction between choices and decisions is so big because people get out there and wonder, well, do I have too many discs? Do I have too few discs? And I think that that really hinders your ability to make confident decisions when you're out there on the course. No matter what you decide to throw, whether it's good or bad, whether you're doing a bag swap and you're throwing someone else's stuff, step up, fully committed, make the right decision. Once you can really assess the choices and things you have, I promise it's gonna make disc golf more enjoyable, more fun, and guys, probably gonna score a lot better. So that is gonna wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you can find some confidence in the decisions that you're looking for, that you can build the best bag possible so that you have the best opportunity to score and find the strokes and scores that you're looking for out there on the course. So thank you so much for watching. Like I said, feel free, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what your thoughts were on that hole of what are you throwing in those conditions at the 194 foot mark? What are you throwing at the 302 foot mark? Would love to know. I think the comment section is always helpful, and hey, who knows? Maybe someone's gonna recommend a disc and you go through and hey, I've never heard about that disc. What does it do? Things like that. Would love to know what you guys are doing. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're gonna leave you with the birdie.